Hey, welcome to today's video. I'm Richard Chapo. I'm a privacy lawyer in San Diego, California. And today we're going to take a look at privacy laws, the pros and cons. So as you probably noticed recently, there have been quite a few new privacy laws and regulations coming out, particularly over the last few years in Europe and the United States. And sometimes it helps to step back and look at these and kind of what they're trying to accomplish, whether they do it correctly, the impact that they're having, and perhaps better approaches. So when we're talking about privacy, particularly in the online arena, the question is, do we need privacy laws? And the answer is yes. And I should clarify that I represent businesses, so you would think my answer would probably be no. But yeah, we do. We really have a vacuum in relation to data collection and monetization, and it's gotten a little out of control. So having some rules and regulations that would help protect some elements of privacy certainly are needed. Now, you have to understand, though, that there's also an exchange happening here. If you are somebody who is an individual and you're concerned about your privacy and you're pretty adamant about that, well, you need to understand also that when you are going online and you're going to websites and apps, any of the sites that you're going to that are free, well, those sites are not free. The money that they are making to be able to function and post a profit or a loss, whatever it is, it's based on data. It's based on you giving your data. So if you don't want those companies to have any of that data, you need to understand and accept, which you may want to do, that most of that free information is going to be gone. So if you go to YouTube to watch videos on how to fix, your leaking sink or something of that sort, you're going to have to pay for all that. If you Facebook, the evil Facebook, well, those communications that you have with your friends and family across the country, that'll be gone. You'll have to pay for access to that. So there's an exchange here. And maybe that's what we want to do. I don't have an answer for you one way or the other, and you'll have to make your own choice. But the important thing to understand is there's an exchange that's happening here. This concept that people have that there's all this free information and everything on the internet, that's just wrong. None of this stuff is free. Your data is paying for this stuff. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Data usage is not a terrible thing. If you go to Google and you're trying to type in a product name that you forgot about, that you had used maybe 3 or 4 days ago, Google will use your search history and will start making suggestions and will often give you, an idea what the actual data or what the actual product was, and you'll be able to remember. And even better, maybe you see some ads with that particular product, so you can go buy it and off you go. To me, that's a good thing. I don't see the big harm in that. Now, obviously, there's certain data we want to search for that we don't want other people to know about. Something that might reflect your health or impact your health insurance premiums or what have you. So there needs to be a balance there. Now, the problem that we have is because we have a vacuum in the privacy arena, typically what governments will do is they'll fill that vacuum by going too far the other way. So we go from the old kind of pendulum situation where on one side, we really needed more laws to suddenly we have way more than we need. And the problem with this is that the internet is a unique platform where we've encouraged growth, and we've seen huge, massive growth and advances in technology and all kinds of things because there's very little barrier to getting in and starting a business online. And the risk we run with these privacy laws is crushing that ability. We're creating so many barriers for companies to get online, even companies that aren't really interested in data. That becomes a huge, massive problem. And if we look to the Europe, for instance, the GDPR's, with its recitals, it's like 400 pages long of requirements, restrictions, and things of this sort. And then there are additional, publications from different supervisory authorities as to what you have to do and this, that, and the other. And all of that is really focused on, the Facebooks and Googles of the world and data brokers and things of that sort. But the GDPR makes no distinction between companies of that size and a little blog. If your grandmother started a blog on tomato growing and she has a couple of affiliate ads on there from Amazon, she has to meet all the GDPR compliance requirements that Facebook does. The only difference is she doesn't have to follow certain record keeping requirements. And that is it. And so as you can imagine, that is just massively burdensome. And most companies are not, most small businesses are not going to be able to meet that. So it's a huge dampener on the entrepreneurial environment there. And we don't want to do that. That's the beauty of the web, is that it's expanded this massive entrepreneurial opportunity. If we look in the United States, we don't have a national federal privacy law, bizarrely enough. And so what we're seeing is states are going ahead and enacting their own laws. California, probably the best well-known one, the California Consumer Privacy Act, also known as the CCPA, and is coming out and going into effect on January 1st, 2020. Now, with California, again, we have this kind of strange overreach because they're focused on the Facebooks and Googles and data brokers of the world. Data brokers, if you don't know, are third parties you've probably never heard of that are accumulating data from first party sites like websites and apps that you deal with personally. And they buy all this data and they put it together and organize it and then sell it off. And you've never heard of any of these companies, but they're kind of the focus of this as well. And so these laws are written with these companies in mind, but they don't take into account how a lot of smaller businesses online work. So in California, for instance, you have the right to tell a website or an app to stop selling personal information, which sounds great at first glance. But the problem is selling is defined so broadly that it could include things like an affiliate program. So if we go back to your mom, your grandma's tomato blog, and she's got a couple of affiliate links to Amazon to tomato products, and you come on and you say, I want to protect my privacy, and you submit an instruction that she should not sell your personal information to Amazon. Well, how's she going to do that? The cost of putting that together is restrictive, to say the least, and it causes a big problem. And realistically, she's probably not going to comply, and instead she'll say, screw it, and she'll have to get rid of that affiliate program. And then after a month or two, she's going to say, well, screw this. This is costing me money. I'm making nothing off of it. I'd like to share stuff with people, but, it's too expensive. So what is she going to do at that point? She's going to do one of two things. She's either just going to, quit completely, or she's going to go to Facebook or a Google product and start posting there so that they deal with the compliance problem. And so what you're essentially doing is these laws that are designed to address abuses by Facebook and the Googles of the world are actually going to help them. They're going to gain more market share, and they're going to be the only companies that are really in compliance because they're the only ones that really have the funds and the man and resources, the employment resources to go ahead and comply with all this stuff. Small businesses don't. It's insane. And so we have this just kind of irony as to how all this is working. It's one of those things where it's, the best intentions lead to the worst results. And that's what we're looking at here. So what should happen? Well, Europe's already kind of done. They're already screwed. If you go look at their entrepreneurial market, there are very few companies that grow in Europe in the online arena because they can't afford to comply with the GDPR and all the other regulations. There are companies that do, but overall, if you have a good idea for an online business in Europe, your first step is to leave Europe. It just is. It's just a terrible environment to grow in. But in the U.S., the answer here is a federal law. We need a national federal law. And we need a federal law that it makes sense for both parties. Now, here's the irony, and it tells you how screwed up Washington is. Why do you think we don't have a national federal law? Because the tech companies are against it? Wrong. The tech companies want a national federal law. And in fact, they have written letters to Congress saying, please pass one. Even if it's a bad law, please pass it. Well, the privacy advocates don't want one? No, they definitely want one. They're saying the same thing. We need a national privacy law. Let's pass one. Let's protect people. And yet Washington still can't get it done. And that should tell you everything you need to know about the dysfunction in our federal government. And I'm not making a political statement. I'm not blaming Republicans. I'm not blaming Trump. I'm not blaming Democrats or Obama. It's just the whole group. They're just useless. They really are on a lot of these issues. It's just maddening. We literally have no opposition to a national federal privacy law, and we can't get one passed. So why is a national federal privacy law important? Because if we have one federal law, they will trump all the state laws, no pun intended. There's something called a supremacy clause, which says essentially that federal laws, are going to be considered the binding law wherever they conflict with state laws. So all the different little state privacy laws that are nearly impossible to comply with, they go by the wayside for the most part. And we have this national federal privacy law, like you see with HIPAA or something of that sort. And then with the federal privacy law, what we need to do is establish different tiers of compliance. And so those tiers will basically be, okay, we have these huge companies that are sucking up data and trying to monetize it, the Facebooks of the world. That's one tier. And we're going to heavily regulate that tier. And we're going to be very definitive about what they can and can't do so we can control some of these abuses. I think everybody would agree with that. And be fine with it. I think even Facebook and Google would agree with that. At this point, I think they just want one set of rules so they can deal with that, and we get out of this disaster we're in right now. We need a second area that deals just with data brokers. So how are we going to deal with these data brokers, these companies nobody's ever even heard of that are accumulating massive amounts of data? And then we drop down from there into different tiers, medium-sized businesses who are manufacturers. And then we get to a small business tier where we cut it off at some point where we say, okay, these are small businesses. We don't want to hurt the entrepreneurial nature of the web. These companies don't have to comply at all. And, maybe it's $25 million in annual revenues or less, a million data points collected a year or less, something like that. We can argue about the numbers, but we need that level. And the reason we need that level is we need that buffer so companies can start and grow without any problems. And you might be thinking, well, wouldn't that subject, create an arena of abuse? What if a company started, 10 different subsidiaries? Well, we already covered that in privacy law. In privacy law, we already say if you have a parent company who controls interest in all these little companies, they're all calculated together. They're all, treated as though they're one company. So it takes care of that. And, could we have some abuses? Sure. But companies that are in that lower tier, that lowest tier, they're never going to accumulate enough information for it to have any kind of practical effect. If you have a database of 5,000 people and it gets hacked, well, quite honestly, hackers aren't even going to go after it because there's not enough volume there. They're going to go sell 5,000 pieces of data. That's worth almost nothing on the dark web. It really is. It has no practical effect. And so in doing this, we keep the benefit of the web where we have a group where we can sell and companies can grow, and the entrepreneurial spirit is strong. It's not restricted, but at the same time, we're protecting privacy rights of people from these larger data collectors in ways that we feel we need to do as a society. It's a perfect resolution for it. Now we'll have to argue over the details and everything. The problem is, do we think we're going to see this? It's hard to see it at the moment. It's just federal. It seems almost impossible to imagine that we're going to get a national privacy law before the next presidential election. And then there's so much bitterness in our political environment at this point that you have to wonder between impeachment and who wins what house, how's it all going to play out? We almost have to be in a situation where one party wins both the White House and both houses of Congress before we would get something. And I'm not sure that's necessarily a great outcome, regardless of which party it is that wins it, because God knows what they'll pass, in addition. But it seems like, the resolution for our problems in the United States, particularly in the privacy laws, is we absolutely need a national federal privacy law. Again, big tech is for it. Privacy advocates are for it. It's hard to find anybody against it. So hopefully we get one soon. But if you take anything out of this video, it's just that privacy laws, keep in mind, not to focus on just the demon groups, the evil groups. It's not just about Facebook and Google. It's about the entire market, from small companies to big companies and so on and so forth. And if you do that, I think you can get kind of an idea of what would be reasonable, for the U.S. market, something that allows businesses to grow and prosper, and something that allows people to be able to get free information online without giving away, all their critical personal information. So anyways, end of rant. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If not, thumbs down. Consider subscribing to the channel to get more privacy law information in the future. And thanks for watching.